You guys, we have really big news over here. Our family is growing. We started a worm farm. So essentially, my boyfriend Tony is really into fishing, and he's trying to move away from like soft plastic baits and just artificial lures, just because sometimes, he gets broken off. They, stay in the water. He kind of just felt like he was like littering, I guess. And not good for the fish too if it gets like stuck in them or if they swallow it, right? So he decided that he wanted to move more towards live bait, and what's easier than worms, right? And then of course, being the gardener that I am, I was like, well, vermicasting's a thing. Vermicasting, not vermicasting. You're gonna hear me mispronounce this a lot because I'm awesome. I've never done it before, but I know that the castings or worm poop is really good for the garden. So I was like, this could be a really fun, like kind of like tandem, project for us. So we are still learning. This is our first time, but I wanted to show you guys, what our setup looks like. And something that I'm learning more about, certain earthworms do better in different areas. So just depending on like the soil temps, moisture levels, things like that. And then also, what are you trying to accomplish? Because the types of worms that you use for fishing and bait aren't always the same types of worms you use for vermicasting. When it comes to like bait, typically people want, like big meaty worms. And when it comes to vermicasting, what's most important is just how efficiently the worms can break down organic material, break down the food, and poop. You want a ton of poop. So some worms poop more quickly than others. So I think what we're doing is kind of unique, and it'll just be interesting to see how it comes along. Because obviously we're, using them for fishing bait, but I also want to use them for the garden. So that's why I thought it was kind of cool and just wanted to kind of show you guys. So right now we have European night crawlers. I'm here in South Florida. European night crawlers do well in soil temps up to like 80 degrees. I want to say it was like 60 to 80 degrees is good for them. It's winter here right now. It's February, so they are perfectly happy. Tony wanted to start off with the European. I'm thinking once summer rolls around, I don't know how they'll be doing. We'll see. Maybe we'll be surprised. But the soil temps can definitely get into the 90s in South Florida in the summer. So we'll see. We could also maybe like move them inside, but I don't know. We're gonna put that by ear. But another type of worm that I was researching. So of course there's like red wigglers. Red wigglers seem to be very popular for vermicasting, but I do believe that they are a little bit smaller. Another type of worm that I found that seemed really interesting to me is the African nightcrawler. So it's a bigger worm, and it can also withstand those higher temps. It's from Africa. So I'm thinking if the European night crawlers don't end up making it through the summer, we tried those. Maybe that could be a good happy medium for Tony and I, because while I definitely am interested in using these castings in the soil, I don't have a huge garden. I'm not, banking on this so to feed all my plants. So it's just kind of a fun experiment, and we'll see what happens. Different types of worms reproduce at different rates too. That's just something else to like keep in mind. But yeah, the goal of this is to hopefully be able to, have them reproduce and truly have like our own like mini little worm farm. All right, so here is the setup. We drilled holes on all sides of this bin and up at the top as well. We did make them small just so that they couldn't escape, which I'll tell you a little bit about that in a second because I do have an interesting story. But yeah, so wanted to make sure they had plenty of airflow, but also wanted to keep the hole small. Here are the dimensions on the container. Just for scale, so you can see it's a pretty small container, easy to move around. All right, so what you're seeing here is all of this stuff is the bedding that we ordered online from the same company we got the worms from. I think it's actually just like a bunch of like paper, like kind of reminds me of like paper mache. And I was doing some reading, and it seems like that's a pretty common bedding for worms. So I think they just like broke down a bunch of paper and different materials like that, and apparently they eat it. And then we added some banana peels on top. We do change out the banana peels every few days. We don't want them to get like moldy and gross. But when I first got the worms, we ordered everything from the same company, but the worms came first. They expedite the delivery of that. So it was, you know, I think the next day or two we had the worms, and then the bedding came a little bit later. So when I first got the worms, I had no bedding. So what I did is I put all the worms in here, and then it's all like mixed in now because they've been tunneling, but I just grabbed some like sand, you know, from my backyard. I did make sure it was an area that I hadn't like really done any amending, you know, to that soil. It should be, you know, fairly natural, nothing. And then I also had a little bit of organic vegetable soil, vegetable gardening soil. So I added that in too. Figured, you know, stay clear of anything like Miracle Grow or anything that's gonna have some type of synthetic fertilizer. So I had that in there with the worms. It was probably filled to like here, 2 inches, I would say. And they were okay in that for like a few days. And then the bedding came, and then I added that just like on top, which is what you're seeing up here. And then once I had the bedding in there, I would say the entire thing was at about 3.5 inches. And now, you know, maybe it's settled a little bit. Well, it looks like it's like at 3, I would say 3.5. So with 100 worms, it seems like this container is an okay size. I know like people with like big setups, they seem okay in here. I guess it also depends on how many worms you're trying to raise, to farm. But yeah, so far so good. The one thing though that I do have a funny story. So everything has been totally fine. Like I said, it's been about a couple weeks now. So essentially, you know, every day I come out and I check on them. Just make, you know, check on the banana peels, and if I need to add anything, I'll spray the bedding with some water occasionally just to make sure the moisture levels are adequate. You know, you don't want to make it too moist, so there is like a delicate balance there. But yeah, I check on them every day. I don't know, maybe that's excessive, but I really like them. I feel like they're part of the family now. And then I'll also, if I'm like out here gardening or doing stuff, I will take the lid off for a little while and just help them get even more airflow. But I always put the lid on if I'm not around. So with that being said, we woke up this morning and some of the worms had gotten out. And it was really interesting because they were not getting out through any of the holes. And as you can see, when we lock this, I mean, this is like pretty freaking secure. But we're wrong, or we were wrong. We thought that they couldn't get out, and they were getting out through here, like out of the lid like area. They were like crawling up and then getting out this lip, even with this like lid on and it being fastened. And so yeah, this morning, super early, it was dark, like 5:45, we saw them like crawling all around on the floor. And you can actually see the trails from them escaping from the bin and moving around. That is all from the worms. I've had this for a couple weeks now, and they have not done that. Now, there's 2 different theories that we have as to why they were doing this. My guess is it has been raining a crap ton. It started raining a lot yesterday, and we have not had rain since we got them. And so what I think is just like, you know, out in the yard, when it rains a lot, they come up. So I just figured it had something to do with the rain and them trying to get out because of that. So Tony thinks that it's actually because we weren't feeding them as much. So, you know, there are banana peels in here right now. But the last few days, I actually did not have any in here. I took them out. So this is just from this morning. But Tony thinks that because we weren't doing that, maybe they were coming up to look for food. So maybe they did want a different type of, food source, or who knows. But anyway, it was really interesting. Now, why consider vermicasting? Worm castings, or worm poop, is a great natural fertilizer for your plants. It's also a great way to recycle leftover waste, like eggshells, banana peels, even cardboard. And it's odorless, so you don't have to worry about any weird smells. All right, you guys, so I hope you enjoyed that video on our new little worm farm. And also, just as an FYI, it is vermicasting. For whatever reason in the video, I keep pronouncing it like vermicasting. So if you want to be cool around your other worm friends, pronounce it the right way, unlike me. All right, so that's all we have for you today. Until next time, here's your reminder to create the world you want to live in.